Frederick's Journey, The Life of Frederick Douglass, by Dorian Rappaport, illustrated by London Ladd. Frederick was taken from his mother when he was a baby and sent to live with his grandparents. His mother slaved 6 days a week from sunrise to sunset on another farm 12 miles away. She longed to see Frederick, but walking the 24 miles round trip and getting back by dawn was almost impossible. Only 5 times did he feel her loving arms around him. I do not recollect ever seeing my mother by light of day. She would lie down with me and get me to sleep, but long before I waked, she was gone. He heard whispers that the man named Old Master was his father, but he was never sure. Grandfather Isaac was free. Grandmother Betsy was a slave. She cared for all of her grandchildren, knowing how painful it would be when she had to give them up. Her loving hands bathed Frederick, fed him, nursed him, and hugged him. He ran freely among the corn stalks, which tickled his face and legs. He watched squirrels scamper up trees and bury their nuts in the earth. Grandmama taught him to fish. He dipped his thread line and pinhook into the water, but only got nibbles, while she scooped up scores of shade with her handsome handmade nets. Living with my grandmother, whose kindness and love stood in place of my mother's, it was some time before I knew myself to be a slave. The summer he was 6, his owner ordered his grandmother to bring Frederick to him. Her loving hands trembled as they walked 12 miles to a place with grand houses and hundreds of black men, women, and children. "They are your kin to you," Grandma said, pointing to 3 children. "Go and play with them." I really did not understand what they were to me, nor I to them. Brothers and sisters were by blood, but slavery had made us strangers. Frederick feared that if he played with them, his grandmother would leave without him. She did, and he wept. Grandmama was all the world to me. One morning, screaming woke him. Old Master was shouting ugly words and whipping Frederick's Aunt Esther. I was hushed, terrified, and stunned, and could do nothing. Her fate might be mine next. He saw more beatings and a few times felt the whip on his back. Another aunt ran away. Try as Old Master did, he could not find her. Her success made me seriously think of escape. After 2 years, Old Master gifted Frederick to relatives in Baltimore, Maryland. Free blacks lived and worked there. His new mistress, Sophia Auld, gave him a clean shirt and pants to wear. He ate at a table now and slept in a straw bed with a cover. He cared for Mistress Sophia's 2-year-old Tommy. In his free time, he was allowed to play in the neighborhood with poor white boys his age. Mistress Sophia taught him the alphabet and simple words so he could read the Bible. Her husband was furious, insisting that reading will forever unfit him for the duties of a slave. She stopped teaching him. But Frederick sensed that words had power. While the family slept, he sneaked into the library and sounded out words in books. With his white playmates, he traded food for words in his copybook. For a single biscuit, my hungry little comrades would give me a lesson more valuable than bread. Day by day, mouth by mouth, year by year, harder and harder words, he could not stop, even though he risked whippings if found out. Frederick read newspapers he found in the street. He copied letters with chalk on fences and sidewalks and barrels. He polished boots for money and bought a book of speeches about freedom. How wondrous to learn that people used words to teach and convince, and that some white people hated slavery. There was hope in these words. 6 years later, Frederick was returned to his old master, who died the following year. Frederick's new master found him too uppity for a slave. He had to be taught a lesson. He rented Frederick to a farmer who starved him, worked him, and whipped him until his spirit was broken and he stopped dreaming of freedom. Then, one day, Frederick fought back. He knew he might be killed for doing so. This battle was the turning point in my life as a slave. I was a man now. It inspired me with a renewed determination to be a free man. The farmer never touched him again. His new master sent Frederick back to Baltimore, where he fell in love with Anna Marie. But it was hopeless to think of marriage. He was a slave. Anna was a free black. For them to be together, Frederick would have to escape to the north, and Anna would follow. His first attempt failed. The second time, he posed as a free seaman. He jumped into a moving train headed north. The conductor asked for his papers and didn't realize that his papers described someone else. Train, steamboat, train. Finally, he arrived in New York City. Free earth under my feet, a new world. Frederick sent for Anna and they married. They moved to New Bedford, Massachusetts. He took a new last name, Douglas, to make it more difficult for his owner to track him down. Soon, he was lecturing in states as far west as Indiana and Illinois. He spoke about his life as a slave and about prejudice in the North. I went in pursuit of a job of chalking, but such was the prejudice against color that white chalkers refused to work with me. Many northern whites did not like what he said. They threw eggs at him and beat him up, but nothing stopped him from speaking the truth. Many white people did not believe that Frederick, who spoke so well, could have ever been a slave. He wanted people to believe him, so he wrote an autobiography. He did not shy away from naming his owner and describing the places where he'd lived. His friends warned that this put him in danger. He did it anyway. His book became a bestseller. Now his owner knew where he was. Frederick unhappily left his family and went to Great Britain and Ireland, where slavery was outlawed. For the first time in his life, he felt truly free. I have spent some of my happiest moments of my life in this country. 2 years later, friends bought Frederick his freedom for $710.96. He returned home and started a newspaper named The North Star because slaves followed that star to freedom. In articles and speeches, he insisted that all Americans should have equal rights. His words angered some people. I hold that women as well as men have the right to vote. What to an American slave is the 4th of July? This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice. I must mourn. It was a crime to help runaway slaves, and Frederick admired Harriet Tubman, a former slave who risked her life to lead others to freedom. He wrote to her, "The midnight sky and the silent stars have been the witness of your devotion to freedom." Anna and Frederick defied the law too. They became conductors on the Underground Railroad and hid whoever knocked on their door. The issue of slavery exploded into civil war between North and South. President Lincoln had said many times that slavery was evil, but insisted he did not have the power to end it. After 2 years of war, he changed his mind and issued the Emancipation Proclamation. It freed millions of Black Americans. Frederick cheered with thousands when the news was announced. I never saw joy before. Men, women, young and old were up. Hats and bonnets were in the air. Frederick insisted that Black men be allowed to fight for their freedom. He traveled from town to town, urging them to join the Union Army. Thousands signed up, including his sons, Louis and Charles. Black soldiers got only half pay and were given inferior weapons. The South often killed, captured Black soldiers, and Douglas met with Lincoln and insisted that they be protected. He did not let me feel for a moment that there was any differences in the color of our skins. I am satisfied now that he is doing all the circumstances permit him to do. After 4 years, the North won the war, but Frederick's happiness was marred when Lincoln was killed. Slavery was now ended everywhere in the United States, but Frederick saw more work ahead. Slavery is not abolished until the black man has a ballot. The new president, Andrew Johnson, did not agree with Frederick, so Frederick took to the road again to convince others. It took 4 more years until lawmakers agreed to give black men the vote. Douglass had traveled far, from slave to free man, from illiterate to educated, from powerless to powerful. It had been a difficult journey. He knew his people faced more difficulties ahead. He often reminded them, "What is possible for me is possible for you."